I always thought I had a pretty solid marriage. My wife, Jessica, and I had been together for 6 years, and we had built a life that most people would envy. We had a nice house, both of us had decent jobs, and we enjoyed hanging out with friends on the weekends. But in hindsight, I guess I was blind to the cracks that were starting to show. It all started a few months ago when Jessica began working late more often. She said it was because of a new project at her marketing firm, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. At first, I tried to be supportive, encouraging her to chase her career goals. I wanted her to succeed. But as the weeks went by, her late nights became more frequent, and I started to notice changes in her behavior. She was more irritable, dismissive, and she started spending more time on her phone. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, claiming she was just stressed from work. One night, I got home earlier than usual, and while I was preparing dinner, I overheard Jessica on the phone in the living room. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught snippets of her laughter, the playful tone in her voice. That's when my gut started to twist. It wasn't the way she spoke to me anymore. I felt like I was losing her. I tried to shake off the unease, but it kept gnawing at me. The final straw came a week later when I accidentally found her text messages while borrowing her phone to look something up. I didn't mean to snoop, but the notification popped up, and out of sheer curiosity, I opened the message thread. My heart sank when I saw the name Mark. He was a nightclub promoter, someone she had mentioned a couple of times but never in detail. I read the texts, feeling my world collapse with each message. They were flirty, loaded with innuendos, and it was clear they had been meeting up. The anger surged through me like a tidal wave, and I had to sit down to catch my breath. I confronted her that evening, heart racing and fists clenched. When I asked her about Mark, her face went pale. For a moment, she tried to laugh it off, insisting it was harmless fun. "We're just friends, babe. You know how it is in the industry. It's all business," she said, flipping her hair back with a dismissive wave. I felt like I was in some twisted movie. Her reaction made me feel like the fool. I pushed harder, demanding she be honest. Jessica's demeanor shifted from flippant to defensive, and she started throwing accusations back at me. "You're always so busy with work. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't need to seek excitement elsewhere." My heart sank even lower. The blame game was in full swing, and I could feel my anger morphing into a deep sadness. The emotional impact of that confrontation was a whirlwind. I felt betrayed, angry, and lost. It was like someone had pulled the rug out from under me. How could she do this? I thought we were happy. A marriage built on trust felt like it was crumbling around me, and I was left standing in a pile of rubble. As the days went by, I wrestled with the decision of what to do next. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, to try and salvage what we had. But another part of me was screaming for revenge, for her to understand the gravity of her choice. I couldn't let her walk away from this unscathed, and something deep inside me knew I had to take action. Little did she know, the betrayal would ignite a fire in me that would ultimately lead to a transformation. I was about to become the biggest name in town, and she was going to see what she lost. After the confrontation, I was a mess. I spent countless nights tossing and turning in bed, replaying every moment of our relationship like a twisted highlight reel. The laughter we shared, the plans we made, the dreams we built together, it all felt tainted now. I felt like I was living in a fog, moving through life as a shell of the person I used to be. But amidst the heartbreak, a different feeling began to creep in. It was a simmering rage, an urge to take control of my life and turn my pain into something powerful. While Jessica continued her routine, pretending everything was fine, I started to hatch a plan. I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were, but it was time for her to see what she had chosen to throw away. I wanted to make a statement, show her that I could be more than just the husband she took for granted. I needed to rise from the ashes of our crumbling marriage and become someone she couldn't ignore. I had always been a bit of a wallflower, content to stay in the background while Jessica basked in the limelight. She loved the nightlife, the parties, and the social scene, while I preferred the quiet comfort of home. But now I was determined to step into the spotlight. I started hitting the gym harder than ever, transforming my body and shedding the few pounds that had crept on during our years together. I put myself on a strict diet, lifting weights, running, and pushing myself to the limit. Each bead of sweat felt like a release, a way to channel my anger and heartache into something tangible. I also began networking in the nightlife scene. I reached out to friends of friends, local business owners, and even other promoters. I wanted to learn the ropes, to figure out how to make a name for myself. I didn't just want to be another face in the crowd. I wanted to be a force to be reckoned with. It was exhilarating, meeting new people and sharing ideas. I poured my heart into it, spending late nights at clubs, soaking up the energy and atmosphere. I started to develop my own persona, creating an image that would not only attract attention, but also make Jessica realize what she was missing out on. The day I finally decided to throw my first event, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. It was a small gathering, but I rented out a trendy lounge that had just opened in town. I went all out, lights, music, drinks, all of it came together like a well-crafted dream. I promoted it online and through word of mouth, and to my surprise, people responded. Friends I hadn't seen in years showed up, and even some of Jessica's acquaintances appeared, catching wind of the buzz surrounding my event. The night was electric. The lounge was packed, people dancing, laughing, and enjoying themselves. I was in my element, moving through the crowd, soaking in the energy like a sponge. And in that moment, I felt a rush of validation. I was no longer just Jessica's husband. I was a man on his own path, carving out a space in a world that had once felt foreign to me. But as the night progressed, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Jessica. She stood at the bar, dressed to impress, and I could see the surprise wash over her as she realized I was the mastermind behind the event. I swear I could almost see the gears turning in her head, her expression shifting from disbelief to curiosity. I was flooded with a rush of satisfaction, knowing that she had to confront the reality of what I had become. I kept my distance, not wanting to show any signs of weakness. She approached me, a forced smile plastered on her face. "Wow, I didn't know you had it in you. This is impressive," she said, trying to sound genuine but failing miserably. I couldn't help but smirk at her. "Thanks, Jess. Just proving that I can bring the party too." I shot back, making sure to keep my tone light, even though the bitterness bubbled beneath the surface. As the evening wore on, I could see her mingling with the crowd, trying to find her footing in a world she had once dominated. But now the tables had turned and I was the one holding the reins. When I caught her eye from across the room, I felt a surge of triumph. She was watching me, really seeing me for the first time in a long while. I knew she was beginning to understand the significance of what I had done, and it filled me with an intoxicating sense of power. That night marked a turning point for me. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had transformed into a driving force that propelled me forward. I was no longer the victim of her betrayal. I was the catalyst for my own rebirth. I realized that this was just the beginning, and I was determined to keep pushing forward. Jessica had made her choice, but I was going to show her what she lost. The next step in my plan was to solidify my reputation in this new world I'd entered, and I was ready to shake up the nightlife scene. After that first event, everything changed. I felt alive, like I had finally broken free from the chains of the past. I poured myself into this new lifestyle, and the energy I felt was intoxicating. I found myself not only organizing more events but also becoming a central figure in the nightlife scene. People recognized me, sought me out, and even looked to me for advice on how to make their own gatherings successful. Jessica watched as I transformed from the man she had taken for granted into someone she couldn't ignore. It was surreal. Gone was the mild-mannered husband who stayed home on weekends, and in his place was a confident man, surrounded by friends and admirers. I started meeting new people, models, artists, influencers. Everyone wanted to be a part of my growing network. The more I advanced, the more I could see the effect it was having on Jessica. She was intrigued, but I could also sense the jealousy simmering beneath the surface. One evening, as I was preparing for another big event, I received a text from Jessica. She wanted to talk. My heart raced at the thought of her wanting to reconnect. Was she finally coming to terms with her choices? I agreed to meet her at an upscale restaurant downtown, a place we used to frequent when we were still on good terms. When I arrived, she was already seated, nervously playing with her napkin. I could tell she had been thinking long and hard about this conversation. As I sat down, she looked up at me, her eyes a mix of vulnerability and determination. "I've seen how much you've changed, and I have to admit I'm impressed," she began, her voice soft but firm. "You've really made a name for yourself in the nightlife scene." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Thanks, Jess. It's been a wild ride," I replied, keeping my tone light, but I could feel the tension building beneath the surface. I wasn't here to reminisce about our past. I was here to confront the betrayal head-on. "I've thought a lot about what happened," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "And I realize now that I was wrong. I was selfish and didn't consider how my actions would affect you." Her apology seemed genuine, but I wasn't ready to let her off the hook that easily. "You think an apology will fix everything?" I shot back, unable to contain the bitterness. "You made your choice, Jess. You chose excitement over our marriage." Her face fell, and for a moment I could see a flicker of regret. "I know I messed up, but I want to work through this. I miss you. I miss us." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with anger. I could remember the good times, but they felt like a life I no longer belonged to. "Do you really think you can just waltz back into my life because I've found success?" I asked, leaning in. "What you did was more than a mistake, it was a betrayal. You shattered my trust. Every time I see you now, all I can think about is Mark and the lies you told." The pain was palpable, and I could see her struggling to find the right words. "I know I can't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to try," she pleaded, her tone softer now. "I want to show you that I've changed." I studied her face, looking for any signs of sincerity. Somewhere deep down, I wanted to believe her, but my heart was still raw and the wound was fresh. "I appreciate that, but you need to understand something," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not the same man you used to know. I'm not going to just sit around waiting for you to decide what you want. I'm building a life without you, and it's exhilarating." There was a fire in my words, a resolve that I hadn't felt before, and I could see her grappling with the reality of my transformation. She sat back, absorbing my words, and for a brief moment I felt a sense of satisfaction. This was the power I wanted to wield, the power to shape my own destiny, independent of her influence. I was no longer the man who stood in the shadows. I was stepping into the light, and it felt incredible. The conversation shifted as we discussed what my future looked like, my events, and the ambitious plans I was formulating. I could feel her wanting to insert herself back into my life, but I kept her at arm's length. I didn't want to give her any false hope. I was enjoying my newfound freedom, and I wasn't ready to let anyone, especially her, rain on my parade. As we parted ways that night, I could see the disappointment etched across her face. Did she expect me to fold easily, to welcome her back with open arms? I wasn't ready for that. I had tasted the thrill of independence, and I was determined to lean into the new version of myself that I was creating. I could finally see the path ahead clearly, and it didn't include her by my side. With each passing week, as my events grew in popularity, I felt more empowered. I was becoming a name people recognized, and Jessica was beginning to realize the magnitude of what she had lost. The jealousy was palpable, and I could sense her desperation rising as I thrived. But I was just getting started. The best was yet to come, and I was determined to make my mark, with or without her. As the weeks rolled on, my newfound life in the nightlife scene became more than just a distraction. It was a full-blown obsession. I was no longer just organizing events. I was crafting experiences. I learned how to negotiate better deals, secure top DJs, and create an atmosphere that kept people coming back for more. Word spread quickly through the city, and soon enough, I was being approached by local businesses wanting to collaborate. Jessica started showing up at my events more frequently. At first, I thought it was her way of trying to win me back, showing interest in my new world. But soon, it became clear that she was there to keep an eye on me, likely hopping to validate her choice to stray. I noticed her mingling with my friends, laughing at their jokes, trying to fit into this life she once abandoned. It was almost comical, the way she tried to engage with people who had only recently become part of my world. One night, during one of my bigger events, I spotted her across the room, standing with a group of friends. She looked stunning, as always, but it felt tinged with desperation. I was in the middle of a conversation with a well-known DJ when I caught her eye. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was affected by her presence, so I focused on the moment, soaking in the energy around me. But in the back of my mind, the seeds of revenge were still germinating. I wasn't just going to let her come back into my life without consequences. I wanted her to feel the sting of her decision, to understand that while she was out chasing thrills, I was building something real. She needed to see the man I had become and recognize the magnitude of what she'd lost. Then came the night that would change everything. I had organized a charity fundraiser at one of the most exclusive venues in town. It was a huge deal, and I had put in weeks of planning. The place was buzzing with influencers, celebrities, and people who had previously ignored me. Jess was there, of course, trying to navigate the social scene. I could see her, flitting around with a forced smile, pretending to enjoy the evening while I was in my element, commanding the room. As the night progressed, I made a point to introduce myself to influential figures and get them excited about my work. I was in my zone, and every time I caught a glimpse of Jessica's expression, part pride, part jealousy, it fueled my resolve. I wanted her to see the accolades, the admiration of the crowd, and the respect I had earned. I was no longer the man standing in her shadow. I was the light that drew people in. Then, I decided to make a move that would not only elevate my status, but also serve as a pointed reminder to Jessica. I arranged for a special guest to make an appearance, a rising star in the music industry who had a huge following. I had been in talks with her manager for weeks, and she was finally able to join us for the night. As the crowd buzzed with anticipation, I took to the stage to introduce her. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said, keeping my voice steady as I looked out at the sea of faces. "We're here to raise money for an incredible cause, and I'm thrilled to welcome someone special to the stage." I felt a rush of adrenaline as I announced the artist's name, and the crowd erupted in cheers. As she stepped onto the stage, Jessica's face dropped. I could see the realization wash over her. This was the kind of event she would have thrived in, where she could flaunt our relationship and bask in the attention of others. But instead, I was the one in control. I was the center of attention, and she was left on the sidelines, grappling with the consequences of her actions. The artist took the stage, performing a few of her hits, and the energy in the room soared. I watched as Jessica moved closer to the stage, her eyes wide with envy and awe. I could almost see her mind racing, trying to reconcile the man she had undervalued with the one standing before her now. I felt a surge of satisfaction. She was witnessing my triumph, and it was delicious. After the performance, I made my rounds, mingling with guests and basking in the praise. Jessica approached me, the facade of casual indifference fading. "You really pulled it off. I'm impressed," she said, though her voice wavered. I couldn't resist the opportunity to push back. "Thanks, Jess. It's nice to know you're still paying attention," I replied, my tone dripping with sarcasm. Her expression shifted from admiration to confusion, and for a brief moment, I could see the cracks in her carefully crafted facade. She was no longer the confident woman who thought she could have it all. She was the one left wondering what went wrong. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, wanting to relish the moment a bit longer, but I eventually agreed. We stepped outside onto the balcony, away from the music and noise. The cool night air felt refreshing, but it couldn't cool the tension between us. "What do you want, Jessica?" I asked, my arms crossed defensively. She took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I don't want to lose you. I realize now that I took you for granted, and I miss what we had." Her voice trembled slightly, and for a moment I thought about what it would mean to let her back in. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the woman who had chosen excitement over commitment. "You had your chance, Jess. You made your choice," I replied, letting the anger seep back into my voice. "You can't just waltz back into my life because I'm doing well now. You need to understand there are consequences for your actions." The sadness in her eyes was tangible, but I felt a surge of strength. I had built this life for myself, and I wasn't about to allow her to take it away. I'm not the same person you knew. I've grown and I'm moving forward. If you want to be a part of this, you'll have to prove that you're worth it. Her eyes widened at my words, and I could see that she understood the weight of what I was saying. I was done being the victim. I was ready to take control of my life, and if she wanted to be a part of it, she needed to recognize the changes in me and in our relationship. As I turned to head back inside, I glanced back at her one last time. You wanted excitement. Welcome to my world. And with that, I stepped back into the vibrant atmosphere, leaving her to think about her choices and the reality of what she had lost. The fallout from that night was immediate. Jessica didn't just fade into the background after our confrontation. She became determined. I could feel her watching me more closely, not with the dismissive attitude I had grown accustomed to, but with a kind of intensity that suggested she was ready to fight for what she had lost. The more I thrived in my new life, the more desperate she seemed to become. She began showing up at my events more frequently, not just as a guest but as a participant, mingling with my friends and trying to insert herself into my world. I couldn't tell if she was trying to rekindle our relationship or simply trying to prove to herself that she could still be the center of attention. It was fascinating and frustrating all at once. One night, at a particularly bustling event I had organized at a rooftop bar, I spotted Jessica at the bar with a group of mutual friends. She was laughing, but there was something off about it, an edge of desperation that made me feel both pity and irritation. I had worked hard to cultivate my reputation, and I wasn't about to let her undermine that with her antics. As the night progressed, I noticed she kept glancing my way, searching for my reaction, hopping to catch me off guard. But I was determined not to let her see how much her presence affected me. I was now a man on a mission, and I had learned to enjoy my newfound freedom. I was meeting new people, creating connections, and getting attention from women who appreciated the man I had become. It was exhilarating. As I worked the room, I couldn't help but notice a few women flirting with me, their eyes lingering a little too long. It was a rush, feeling desired and admired. I had been so focused on my revenge that I hadn't fully embraced the possibilities that came with being single. I started to entertain the idea of moving on, of finding someone who appreciated me for who I was and not who I had been. Then came the night that made everything come to a head. I had organized a charity auction, one of my most ambitious events yet. The venue was upscale, the guest list full of influential individuals, and I had arranged for a charity that meant a lot to me. I was determined to make a splash, not just for the sake of my reputation, but to truly make a difference. As I set up for the auction, I felt a buzz of excitement. I wanted everything to be perfect, every detail meticulously planned. Guests began arriving and the energy in the room was electric. I was in my element, moving between guests, making introductions, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Jessica was there, of course, trying to act nonchalant, but I could see her watching me, her expression a mix of admiration and jealousy. During the auction, I took the stage to address the crowd. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here to make a difference, and I'm thrilled to have so many amazing people joining us. Together, we can change lives. As I spoke, I looked out over the audience and my eyes met Jessica. For a moment, I paused and I could see a flicker of recognition in her expression. She was watching me, really watching me. This was the man I had become, and I could see her grappling with the reality of her choices. After my speech, I stepped down and resumed mingling. That's when I noticed her talking to a man I recognized, one of the city's prominent businessmen. They were laughing, leaning in close, and I felt a surge of anger. Was she trying to make me jealous? Did she think flirting with someone influential would somehow validate her actions? I approached them, trying to keep my composure. Hey, just having a good time? I asked, my tone light but laced with an edge. She turned to me, feigning innocence. Just chatting, you know. This is a great event, isn't it? The businessman smiled, clearly enjoying the banter. Then, in a bold move, Jessica leaned closer to the businessman and said, "You should get to know my ex-husband. He's quite the success story now." The words hung in the air and I felt my stomach drop. Was this her attempt at revenge? To show me that she could still play the game, too? I forced a smile, but inside I was boiling. I couldn't let her see how much her words affected me. Thanks for the compliment, Jess. I appreciate you trying to promote my brand, I replied, injecting my words with sarcasm. I could see her expression falter and the businessman looked confused, sensing the tension. Why don't you come join us then? He offered, trying to lighten the mood, but I wasn't about to let that happen. I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll be busy with my guests, I said, my tone firm. With that, I turned on my heel, walking away without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. The rest of the night was a blur. I poured myself into the event, throwing myself into conversations and keeping my distance from Jessica. But I could feel her eyes on me, and it fueled my determination. I was building something incredible, and I wasn't going to let her attempts to reclaim my attention derail me. As the auction wound down, I had successfully raised a significant amount for the charity. It felt rewarding, knowing that my efforts were making a difference in the community. And yet, even with the success, I couldn't shake the feeling of Jessica's presence lingering like a shadow. After the event, I received messages from friends and acquaintances praising the night's success. Among them was a message from Jessica, asking to talk again. I hesitated, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, to see if she had truly understood the impact of her actions. But another part of me felt that I had already given her more than enough chances. In the end, I decided to respond, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation. I'm really busy right now, Jess. I think it's best if we give each other some space. I wrote back, hitting send before I could second-guess myself. As I put my phone down, I felt a mix of relief and power. I was finally free to pursue my own path without the weight of her decisions dragging me down. I was no longer her husband. I was a man carving out his own legacy, and I was determined to see it through to the end. I was ready for whatever came next, and I would show Jessica what she had lost for good. The days turned into weeks, and the distance between Jessica and me only grew wider. My events continued to gain momentum, and I was becoming a staple in the nightlife scene. I had built an empire of sorts, and it felt incredible to finally have something that was entirely my own. Each night as I stepped into the spotlight, I felt a rush of pride, knowing that I had risen from the ashes of a crumbling marriage to become someone people looked up to. But even as I thrived, Jessica persisted. I would hear rumors of her attempts to reconnect with friends from our past, and it became clear she was trying to do damage control. Initially, I found it amusing. She was attempting to paint a picture of a woman who had made a mistake but was now profoundly changed. But the more I watched, the more I realized it was less about redemption and more about her own insecurities. The reality of her actions was starting to hit her, and she was struggling to cope. Then came the night that would change everything. I was hosting a high-profile charity gala at a luxurious venue, and the guest list was impressive. It was a night designed to pull in big donations for the cause, and I had pulled out all the stops. As I prepared for the night, I was filled with excitement and anticipation. This was my moment to shine, and I wanted to make an impact. As I stepped onto the stage to welcome the guests, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The crowd was buzzing, and I could see familiar faces, including those of new connections I had made along the way. But as I scanned the room, my heart sank when I spotted Jessica entering, looking radiant yet out of place. She was attempting to blend in, but it was obvious that she had come to see what I had built. Through the course of the evening, I kept my distance, focusing on mingling with guests and ensuring everything went smoothly. But every time I glanced her way, I could feel her eyes on me, watching my every move. There was a tension in the air, and I knew that she was calculating her next move. It felt both exhilarating and suffocating. During a break in the evening's festivities, I stepped outside for a moment of fresh air. I needed to clear my head to reset my focus before returning to the crowd. That's when Jessica found me. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice slightly shaky. I hesitated, but I could see the sincerity in her eyes. Despite everything, part of me was still curious about what she had to say. "Talk," I replied, crossing my arms defensively. "What do you want?" She took a breath, her expression shifting from apprehension to determination. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about what I did, and I realize now that my choices hurt you deeply. I've been selfish and I want to show you that I'm different now. Her words were earnest, but I remained guarded. I had heard apologies before and they meant little without action backing them up. Different how? I asked, letting the skepticism seep into my tone. You think showing up to my events will win me back? You need to understand that it's going to take more than just words to rebuild trust. She nodded, her expression softening. I get that, but I'm not asking for your trust right away. I just want a chance to prove that I can be the partner you deserve, the partner I failed to be. I looked at her, searching for any signs that she genuinely understood the weight of her actions. You need to realize that I'm not the same man you left behind. I've changed because of what you did, Jess. I've learned to value myself and my worth. I won't be the same husband you took for granted before. Tears welled in eyes, and it struck me how genuine her feelings seemed. For the first time, I saw her not as my betrayer, but as someone who had faced the reality of her choices. Maybe she was different now, but the question lingered. Was it enough? I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I want to try. I'm ready to put in the effort, she said, her voice trembling. I've seen how you've built your life without me, and I admire that. I want to support you, not just as your ex-wife, but as a friend. I don't want to lose you completely. Her words hung in the air, and I felt a knot in my chest. I remembered the pain, the heartache, and the betrayal, but I also felt the stirrings of something else, a flicker of hope. Could we really rebuild? The decision weighed heavily on my mind. I need time, I finally said, my voice steady but firm. I'm not ready to step back into what we had, but I won't dismiss the possibility of a new beginning. If you're serious about this, it's going to take work. And you need to understand that. I won't wait around while you figure it out. She nodded, the relief washing over her face. I understand. I'll prove to you that I'm committed to changing. We parted ways that night with a tentative agreement. I didn't know what the future held, but I felt lighter, as if the burden of anger and resentment had begun to lift. In the following weeks, I kept my distance, allowing time and space for both of us to reflect. As the months rolled on, Jessica made efforts to be present in the community without overshadowing my accomplishments. She volunteered her time to support the charity events I organized, showing up with enthusiasm and genuine dedication. It was refreshing to see her actively engaged and trying to contribute. I appreciated her efforts but still treaded lightly, not wanting to rush into anything too soon. Ultimately, I realized that I had gained more than just a successful career and a vibrant social life. I had discovered my own strength, my independence, and the value of self-respect. I knew that whatever happened between Jessica and me, I would be okay. I was no longer defined by her decisions. I had carved my own path, and I was proud of it. As for Jessica, I found myself cautious but open to the idea of friendship. I didn't know if I would ever fully regain the trust we had once shared, but I was willing to explore the possibility of a new connection, one built on mutual respect. I had learned a valuable lesson through this tumultuous journey, the importance of self-worth and the strength that comes from within. And as I moved forward, I carried those lessons with me, ready to embrace whatever came next. Whether it was a renewed relationship with Jessica or the chance to find someone new who would truly appreciate the man I had become.